Good afternoon. Welcome to the Aetherius Society. It was founded in England in 1955 by a gentleman here, Dr. George King, who, relative to this subject of this afternoon, avatars, masters, and saints throughout the ages, we would certainly say was a master. We'll go into that a little bit more later on this afternoon. And as a master, specifically a master of yoga, he had raised a force that we all have in the base of the spine called the Kundalini. And he raised this force through a channel in the spine called the Sushumna channel, through the various chakras, the psychic centers, right the way up to his Christ center and even his crown center, and went into a state of samadhi, which is regarded as the goal of yoga. Yoga being a Sanskrit word, as is Kundalini, as is samadhi. But yoga meaning union with God, union with all that there is. And it was with this ability, which he attained in the early 1950s, after a very intense, diligent practice of various yogic exercises, that he was contacted by, so far as we're concerned in the Aetherius Society, as far as we believe in the Aetherius Society, intelligences beyond this earth, which in Hindu philosophy, yogic philosophy, have been regarded as avatars. And on very rare occasions, to the best of our knowledge, have come to this earth. And on even, perhaps we might say, even more rare occasions, have made themselves known to mankind. In other words, there have been beings, masters, avatars on this earth who we have not necessarily known are here. And so Dr. George King, with his ability to go into this yogic samadhic trance, was used as a medium for these intelligences who spoke through him while he was in this condition, in a very deep state of yogic trance. And just to sort of give the context of that period, I'm talking about the 1950s, some of you may recall, or at least know of, this was what was known as the Cold War. And the Cold War, which was essentially a standoff between the Soviets on the one hand and the United States and the NATO countries on the other hand. And it was a time when certainly the Americans and the Western forces had the atomic bomb, and it was when the Soviets very shortly afterwards developed it for themselves. And after that we went mad, quite literally crazy. If we think we were crazy now, we were far more crazy back then in that period of the 1950s. I will try and get this across as succinctly as I possibly can, but I think it's very relevant to this class and to what is going on, and specifically relevant in terms of avatars, masters, and saints right now at this time. We are living in the days of biblical prophecies. And the prophecies, of Nostradamus. These are the days that we are now coming into, have come into, and masters are involved. So anyway, just coming back to the Cold War, where we were saying we went absolutely crazy. Having developed the atom bomb, we went on to develop the hydrogen bomb. And in 1 year alone, 1958, which is quite important to me because it was the year I was born, it's also important to the Aetherius Society because we had some very important, interesting transmissions from these avatars coming through Dr. George King. You may hear one of those later on this afternoon. But in 1958, having developed the hydrogen bomb, no less than 110 hydrogen bombs were tested by the Soviets and the Americans, and maybe the French and the Brits got in there a little bit, but 110 hydrogen bombs in 1 year. And each hydrogen bomb was the equivalent of 1,000 atom bombs, the size of those dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So we're talking in 1 year the equivalent of 110,000 atom bombs being exploded on this Earth, this very fragile planet that gives us our home in space, in just 1 year. And it was also a time not just of the Cold War, but it was a time when we were being visited by, for want of another word, UFOs, or extraterrestrial intelligences, who were being seen by many different people in many different countries around the world. Of course, you had the famous Roswell incident in 1947. I think the term flying saucer was coined in 1948 by a man called Kenneth Arnold, who saw these saucer-shaped discs in Washington State. And it's our belief in the Aetherius Society that the major reason why these flying saucers were being so commonly seen at that time is because humanity has been at this crazy nuclear age before in two previous civilizations. One of which, the most recent of which, was Atlantis, if you've heard of Atlantis. And this isn't just the Aetherius Society philosophy. I mean, this is, quite general. And before that, Lemuria. So once again, humanity had reached this very pivotal, critical point where we threatened to destroy our civilization. I was going to say for the third time. We actually believe for the fourth time. But that's probably beyond the scope of this afternoon's lecture. So that's the context. Certainly of the Aetherius Society. This one individual, a master of yoga, having spent 8 hours a day for 10 years doing intense yogic practice, which is the hallmark of most of the masters, certainly. Having raised the kundalini through the spine, able to go into this what we call a positive yogic somatic trance, and be used as a medium for the masters to speak through him, to communicate to us, to humanity, to those who are ready, willing, and concerned. I mean, I think if you're not concerned, you're not really going to listen. And there's a wonderful bumper sticker. If you're not concerned, you haven't been paying attention. And for those of us who are paying attention to what's going on in our world and the great unraveling that's taking place, and in some ways the essential unraveling that's taking place, then it does bring about a great deal of concern about the situation where we're in. And that's why this afternoon's lecture hopefully is so relevant to this, because there is a bigger picture. There's a much, much, much bigger picture. And you're not obviously going to hear about this bigger picture from our politicians and our economists and even our environmentalists, for that matter of fact. And it's an ancient picture. There's nothing new about it. And ultimately, it's divine. It's all a part of divinity. We're all a part of divinity, including the earth, the sun, the whole galaxy. It's all an aspect of God. So goodness knows what I've just said. I hope you followed the thread. Thank you. And on that note, I'm going to thrust it as I do, but I know that I'm thrusting it on a very strong pair of shoulders. On my dear friend, in some ways cousin, Maja D'Aoust, who we love to welcome back to the Aetherius Society, who is even at her young age, I would say, steeped in metaphysics. And so Maja has come along, and she's going to now go into various aspects of avatars, masters, and saints throughout our history. To some extent, you can't cover them all because we've got to be out of here by 5 o'clock.
That's true.
And then we're going to come, and I'm going to cover a little bit about what I've been talking about these masters in our present day. And you're going to hear some outstanding cosmic transmissions, at least extracts, just snippets. I think there's almost a dozen of these, of masters, avatars from other planets speaking through Dr. King, relevant to this age and this period of this age that we are now passing through. So with that, Maja, over to you.
Thank you, Paul. It's great to be here always. Like I said, I love coming and talking about all this stuff. And this is a very important subject. I don't know if you can hear the words avatars, Messiah, saints, things like that. But if you realize the implications of them, every single religion that we as human beings in our little like weird bodies practice are inspired by these folks, right? These avatars, these messiahs, these masters are the impetus for formal religious practice that we do. You want Christianity, Muslim tradition, Hinduism, all based upon these people. So for me, as someone, if you start thinking about religion and what is religion, you kind of have to look at these people and who are these people? Where do they come from? What are they talking about? What are they doing? So for me, a lot of this is research that I've culminated trying to find out the origins of where those concepts of all the major religions come from. And it's all these crazy individuals that people like deify and see, but no one really talks about like who are they, where do they come from? And it's even more important because the nuclear and atomic weapons that Paul was talking about are kind of these weapons that people use to fight about who these avatars and messiahs are, right? You guys know, like India, Pakistan, okay, we got Muslim, we got Hindu, okay, we got Israel, and all of the Islam, it's all avatars and messiahs. So the impetus for religion also on the other end of the spectrum from these avatars and messiahs breeds conflict in humanity as well. I don't think as a result of the avatar, but as a result of our inability to recognize their true purpose. What are they doing? We take it to an ego and then we make bombs. All on Jesus. You know how many people Jesus has killed? As a result of people like fighting that he is the only avatar, the only true master. How many people have died from that? So stupid, right? So to understand this concept of who these people are is a big deal for the world. Because you look at all this garbage happening, a lot of it stems from issues from these very kind of concepts and people and beings and ideas. So if we can try and push our heads open a little bit about it, I think it's going to help. And you guys can go tell lots of people too, you know. But I'll tell you what, if I try to tell some people that have a certain idea of who these folks are, they'll get very upset. And they may try to start a fight. They might not have any bombs, but you'll notice this as well. I'm sure some of you may have confronted it. It's upsetting to people to talk about these folks. It stirs up a lot of stuff. So what are we talking about when we say the word avatar? I know the movie got really popular, so everyone kind of has a concept of that word now. But if you look at the Sanskrit term, you guys, does anyone know what it means? It means actually to descend in a spiral from above. The literal translation of avatar is a descent in a spiral down to a lower place. So it's from above to below. If you look in the Hindu literature, which is where the word comes from, it was used to describe when Vishnu came to planet Earth in physical form. And one of those forms was Krishna. You guys all heard about Krishna? The Bhagavad Gita, right, is where the story of Krishna comes from. Krishna is an avatar of Vishnu, right? So that means the Vishnu that's up here in space and heaven and wherever you want to think of it as a higher frequency, took a little spiral down and put itself in the body of Krishna. So it takes form. It goes from spirit into form. That's avatar, right? And of course, a lot of people, when they think about who an avatar is they might know, you usually think of Jesus, because a lot of folks aren't familiar with Hinduism and stuff like that. And obviously, there's a lot of debate over whether or not Jesus was, in fact, one of these folks. Obviously, no one in Judaism believes it. No one in Islam believes it. Some people would call him more of a master. So sometimes he's talked about not as an avatar, but as a master. So what's the difference between that? Well, an avatar is someone that, like I said, comes down from heaven somewhere in outer space and takes physical form. A master is an existing human being who acquires through work usually. It doesn't come right into you, except some of the saints. It'll just descend into their bodies. But most of the masters have to work very hard. Okay, so we'll talk about that. So there's avatars, there's masters, there's saints, and there's prophets. There's all kinds of different levels, right? A prophet is someone who will talk about an avatar coming, right? In the Bible, for example, the prophet Isaiah. The prophet Isaiah says there will be an avatar incarnating on the earth. This is what they call the Messiah. And this is in the Old Testament, not New Testament, right? They have prophets in the New Testament, but the Old Testament, that's the book of the Jews, right? The Torah, the 5 books of the Torah. It's announced by the prophets that an avatar is coming. That's what the prophets do. They let us know it's going to be here. And in the Torah, in Judaism, you guys know there wasn't just one Messiah. Do you guys know this? In Judaism, the word they use for Messiah is Messiah. And they believe there is a Messiah in every generation, always present on the earth. That's what they teach. We don't just get one chance, right? And then that's it. They're always here to kind of hold down the fort. And in every generation they come, they don't always tell us that they're here. But it's not like since we killed Jesus now, that's it. No avatar here. The Jews do not believe that. They believe always present, the avatar comes down. And like I said, that there's lots of debate about that. Lots of people disagree. That's why there's all this fighting. You know, they get very charged about this, whether or not it's true, right? So then we think, well, okay, what does Messiah mean? What does that mean, Messiah? Well, that comes from a term, anointed one. And if you look at anoint, it means you put ointment on someone. And then you can say, well, okay, what does that mean? Like you just rub a little oil on them and now you're a Messiah, that's it? Seems pretty easy, right? We can all do that, no problem. But the term is used when you're raised up. The oil is a special combination of different material. And there's a few scholars have had different ideas about what is in the oil. Do you guys want to know? You can make some. So if you look at, in Exodus, this comes from Exodus, it has myrrh, cinnamon, cannabis, funny, huh? Yeah. Cassia, and olive oil. This is in Exodus, the description of the oil used to anoint the Messiah. Now, when do you anoint someone? It is when, it's like communion, when you put God into them. So an anointed one is someone who has been chosen to be raised up to a higher level, right? That's what Messiah is. They're operating at a different place. And that's the anointment, is that kind of symbol for that, right? So if you look at Jesus, right, some people think he's a master, but if you look at the story, there's something very important, and this was something Paul kind of alluded to that makes them not quite just from here, they're something else as well. And this is a big important thing because this is the concept of the demigod or the Son of God. And this is something that goes back into every single culture, every single religion. You look at prehistory. Shamanism has stories of people that are from half outer space, half earth, a combination. This is the demigod. And you look essentially at this Jesus story, what happens? Human mother, divine father, right? Combination, heaven and earth together. Not just from the earth, but from somewhere else too. Now, some people think that's kind of weird, but look at Greek mythology. Do you guys know how many demigods Zeus made? A lot. There's so many stories about all of them. The demigods are children of Zeus who comes down and mates with human women. And this is prevalent throughout the Greek tradition, these stories of these people. One of them, Hercules. You guys know the story of Hercules, right? He was a big hero that did a lot of things, helped a lot of people, changed the world, saved the earth, right? Hercules is half man, half outer space, right? Half Zeus, half Jupiter. Jupiter is the planet of Zeus. So he's part Jupiter, part man, right? This is where we get into the planetary connection.
In that incarnation.
In that flesh, in that body. Just chosen for that time to come down, just like Krishna and Vishnu, right? Vishnu is always, forever, forever. Krishna was only for a moment in time in his flesh, right? So we have the Greeks talking about it. You look at the Hindu tradition, the rishis make all kinds of avatars. You guys know about the rishis? Those are the 7 saints. They correspond to the Big Dipper. They come down, they interbreed with humanity, with humankind. So many stories of those in the Rig Veda, right? You read the Rig Veda, it's pretty crazy. Have any of you guys read the Rig Veda? The stories in there are nutso. Like, it's all this super cosmic interplay of stars coming down to Earth and making men. That's the essential story, is that stars come down, avatar, and they formulate humanity. In Africa,
stars, of course, being suns.
Yes.
But just, what is interesting is the so-called Star of Bethlehem seen at the time of Jesus, which presumably was not a sun.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
Could have been a flying saucer.
Could be many heavenly bodies, right? Heavenly body is probably a better term, really. So in Africa, there's stories in the tribes of the Dogon tribe, right? It has the dog star from the Sirius constellation. Men came down, half man, half person. That's where we get agriculture. That's where they get language. That's where they learn how to talk. You go in Egypt, Osiris comes down, takes the form of a bull, takes the form of a man, makes other men. This is a big story. So you start looking around and you see that all over the world, throughout history, this is thousands and thousands of years, everybody's talking about these heavenly bodies that come to the earth and they make these divine beings. So what do those divine beings do in the stories? They either help mankind greatly, or they're like the Antichrist version, right? There's a couple in the mythologies. They're either super duper good or they're super duper evil, right? And then you can get into the whole, like, what's the difference between good and evil thing. But essentially, like a lot of those super villains, those reach a certain point, and then we have like stories in the Bible where divine intervention has to happen. Do you guys know why the flood happened? That story in the Bible? According to the book of Enoch, God brought the flood because there were too many antichrists, right? The Nephilim were these sons of divine beings coming down, interrelating with people, and they were evil. They spread too much evil. It was bad news. That's the impetus that brought the flood. Did you guys know that? Nephilim brought the flood. Antichrist. Right? And in the Hindu mythology, when evil gets too big in the world, an avatar descends to try and balance it out. It's like, oh, too much evil, heading for trouble. We got to send in an avatar. This is out of control. You guys are messing up. I'm going to bring a flood. I got to bring something. So you got to clean up the mess that you guys are making. Right? So a lot of the stories will say that the impetus to drop down an avatar is because we just messed up, too much garbage everywhere, and now it's cleanup time. So the avatar comes in and they start cleaning up the mess, right? And to answer your question about the prophets and the masters, the avatar is like uber duper and affects huge amounts of people, right? Masters will affect people, but they can't quite do it on the level that the avatar can. They'll be realized human beings, and they can teach, and they can help, and they can do a lot of things, but they don't quite have the mojo that the avatar has, right? And the other interesting thing is to look at the symbolism that these avatars had. As Paul had mentioned, they're not quite earth, they're not quite heaven, right? What does that mean, that you're half heaven, half earth? Can you guys like think about that in your brain? What do you think it would mean if you were half from outer space and half from planet Earth? Can you guys picture that in your head? There's a very famous symbol for that, which also extends into prehistory, called the Vesica Pisces. You guys all know what that is? If you take two circles, this is heaven, this is earth, and you put them together, the Vesica Pisces is a little sliver in the center where the two of those circles meet. It looks like this. That's the Vesica Pisces. It's not quite one circle, not quite the other. It's both the circles. This little sliver like this is where most of the action happens on planet Earth. This little sliver is what happens when cells divide, meiosis, mitosis. You guys were all a zygote once, right? A single circle. You guys know what happened when you started to split? Oh, Vesica Pisces. Vesica Pisces. That center between the two circles, that's where everything kind of changes and goes. You guys know atoms. Here's another good example. You know how atoms stick together? There are two circles. They come together. Their electrons make a little thing right here where both of them can hang out. It's the place between places. It's an intersection.
So there would be a little
where
space.
two things have come together, right? Intersection. You guys, what's one of the symbols of Jesus? A cross. What's a cross? An intersection, right? Where two things or four things converge into one thing. It's a convergence point, right? Vesica Pisces, you guys know what that word means. This is pretty funny. It means fish bladder. Not very sexy, right? Fish bladder. What does a fish bladder do? A fish is an animal that lives in the ocean. A fish bladder fills with air. So you have air in the middle of the water. A fish just made a space between spaces in its body because it's inundated with water in the water, but it just made a magic little space in its fish bladder, right? And there's a really good symbol for that I brought. That's one of my favorite symbols. You guys have probably seen it all over the darn place, but never really thought about it. What is one of the big symbols for Christianity? That is a Vesica Pisces. If you take these lines and continue them, it makes two circles. Two circles. Magic.
And when a Christian met another, one would draw a fish in the sand and the
That's
other
right.
would draw another fish in the sand, and the two fish are the symbol of Pisces, which was the Piscean age. Was that what
Precisely.
what you were about to say?
Yes. You're so psychic.
Well, Piscean people apparently are very psychic.
Well,
and I'm not
and
Pisces.
it's true. It's true. And additionally, people think that Jesus' birthday was Christmas. No. He was a Pisces. They've backtracked it into the Bible. And some, of course, there's lots of debate. But the Christians appropriated that date in December from the pagans. You guys know they had want to do so they could eradicate pagan religion. But his true birthday was Pisces. February 23rd is where some scholars
we
put it.
go March 15th.
Oh, March.
March.
Oh, I see. Where did that come from?
That's what we've heard in the
Yeah.
and we celebrate
it's still
it
Pisces.
every year. Yes, it's still Pisces. And it also was what of course the Romans referred to as beware the
The
Ides
Ides of March. Totally.
Whether there's a connection there, I don't know.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting because Julius Caesar named himself a son of God. Do you guys know this? He called himself son of God. And then his son Augustus was the son of God. This is actually true, okay, if you can believe the humility involved in that kind of statement. But it was a very common thing with those Greeks and Romans. They wanted to appropriate those kind of demigods because those were part of their mythology, their folklore. So,
on which note, sorry to keep interrupting.
Oh, no, do.
But I mean, that's why we've December, which is December, 10th month, is actually the 12th month, because Julius, July, Augustus, August, pushed their way into the calendar.
Precisely. Yeah. Because they thought they were avatars, right? These men will reach these positions of power and then make themselves messiahs. They'll just go ahead and say, oh, now I'm a messiah. That's it. Now I'm in power and you have to listen to me, right? And the reason that's so annoying is because what do the real messiahs do? Do they try and put power over people? No, they wash their feet. They have complete humility in front of them. They will sacrifice their entire fleshy body they've just gone through so much effort to incarnate in order to just help one person. That's what the real avatars do, the real messiahs do. If you see something great, you can catch it and your life will change. Has that happened to anybody? You see a miracle, your brain is different now. If you witness a miracle, you aren't going to go back to the way that you were before. That's the breaks, that's how it goes in this business. So that purpose of an avatar, when you see that, when you feel it, what happens? Evolution happens. Because once you see it, you're not the same anymore. You can't go back. So now you're different. Now you're evolved. Now you've gone up to another level. So that's how it goes by contagion, right? And spreads. And now we got a religion, because all these people saw or heard about this miracle, and they're like, oh my God, how am I supposed to wash my dishes regular now? Because this happened, Changes people's lives. And so the purpose of these avatars, of these masters, is trying to grab everybody up together and say, look at this. Look at this.
There's a bigger picture.
There's something else. There's something else. You guys can go up more, right? Look at all this up here. Check it out. You don't have to do this. You don't have to cause all this suffering, do all this malarkey. You can do this, right? So that's why a lot of people call them way showers too. They're a way shower because they show you, they're like, hey, you could do it that way, but look, you could do it this way too. This is a whole nother thing that you didn't even think about, And it's important to remember the prevalence of these, because people, I think, get a little messed up thinking that there might be just one, or there's only one component, and then that's it, and no one else is capable of it. It'll never happen again. Now we're just ruined. It's all game over, There's lots. You guys think this is it right now? There's so much stuff before and so much stuff after. It's a big circle. It's not a line. You got to put everything in there, And, I mean, in Judaism, with how they believe there's a Messiah for every generation, there was a fellow named Menahem Schneerson. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of him. If you go to Fairfax and Pico, they'll have billboards with his picture, and they say Messiah now. Have you guys ever seen that? It's got a picture of an old rabbi with his beard and his tzitzis and his curls, and it says Messiah now. That means Messiah now. And this fellow, Menahem Schneerson, he was the last Lubavitch Rebbe from a generation of people, and he just passed away. This was maybe 9 years ago or something. So that's just one example of contemporary avatar, right? You don't have to, put it to some place in the past or some place in the future. What's the difference between the past, future, and right now? It's happening simultaneously. It's all building and interacting together, right? So the possibilities for avatars, is it just one? There's another question. Can we have only one avatar on planet Earth at a time?
No.
No, not according to the stories. I mean, depending on what you believe. So yeah, and there's also that unreachable idea, right? There is this Jesus or avatar Messiah, but the regular us can't get anywhere near that, right? There's this Buddha, and we can all worship the Buddha, but we can't be Buddha, right? You guys, you can't touch them. There's no intersection between us and the Messiah or the Master or the Saint. They're like this freakish other species that we can't even come close to because we're just people, right? But again, the purpose of these avatars, of these masters coming, is the way shower, to show you how you're going to do it like them. How are you going to be better? How are you going to adopt these kind of practices?
And evolve.
Yes, evolution. The purpose is not to make them holy and worship them in some church so you can never get there. That's like the worst thing ever to do. And what do people do? They make these huge, giant golden Buddhas, which Buddha was an iconoclast. He said, don't worship anything. And people go and they worship this big golden Buddha because they can never do anything that Buddha does. So dumb, right? The purpose is to try and get like the golden Buddha. Don't worship him like nothing, like you can't do. You have to act, you have to do. That's what the whole message of Buddha, of Jesus, of masters, of saints, do karma. Make karma, do karma. Don't sit there worshiping a golden Buddha. Go help your kid or help your neighbor or do some stuff. You know? That's all it was. I mean, the biggest purpose for religion and churches and stuff like that is so that we can come together and work together, do stuff together, remind ourselves to do stuff, because we forget, right? Everybody forgets. But the purpose of religion is not to place that power outside yourself, to take it away from you and put it into Jesus and Buddha. That's like what has kind of happened, sadly, in many communities. They remove it completely from you and they place it into Jesus and Buddha where you can never get it. You know, you never reach it except through them. They can do it. And you do what? You yell at people on the street, you know, don't do anything. I mean, come on. So, and I think like a lot of the stuff with the Aetherius Society is about doing. Like, let's do it. Let's go. Let's make some stuff happen. You know, do some yoga. Again, yoga, as Paul mentioned, is yoke. Union with God is yoga. Bring together. You guys know Hatha yoga? Join together the sun and the moon. Take two circles, bring them together. You make what? An intersection. That's what yoga is. Bring heaven and earth together. That's what yoga means. Do some yoga. Like George King, you make a Vesica Pisces. You just made a place between the places, right? Through those practices, there's techniques, things you can do to make it go, right? But everybody just wants to watch TV.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So when you think about this, when you see, you can step out of it and look at religion. Watch the news. Look at what's happening in Israel. Look at what's happening in India and Pakistan. Look what's happening in Kashmir. Look at what's happening in Indonesia. Take a step out and think about what is really going on there. You can see it in a bigger scope, throughout history, throughout context, right? And think about what that idea is of the messiahs, of the avatars, and make it a little bigger. Make it a little bigger, right? Because if you just put it on, oh, well, that's Muhammad, that's Jesus, that's Buddha. Oh, I mean, you know, we're going to go nowhere fast. Got to make it a little bigger. So that's most of what I had to say, and
Great.
just introduce the concept.
And you're saying make it a little bigger.
Yeah.
And that's what the Aetherius Society is doing.
Yeah.
We're making it a little bigger. But if we'd been having this conversation 500 years ago, we would be trying to perhaps convince the audience, or they'd be trying to convince us, that the world is not flat, it's round.
Right.
And, you know, that was the sort of great big debate back then because of our limitation of thought and understanding and science. And, of course, the planet was always round. and it never was a time when it was flat, and it never was the center of the universe. It always revolved around the sun, and the sun was just not the center of the universe either. It was just one sun in great big galaxy, which is just one galaxy amongst billions of galaxies. And where we are now in our philosophical, metaphysical, spiritual understanding, and this is what the Aetherius Society, to a certain extent, if not a large extent, is pioneering, is the fact that there is life on other dimensions, certainly, other levels of vibration around this Earth and on the other planets. And in saying this, it doesn't make it new for the first time. It's always been the case. And in terms of these avatars coming to help us to evolve through the process, yes, of raising this kundalini, so that we, like them, have the experience of cosmic consciousness in which we know that it's all one, and beyond that have the experience, as demonstrated by at least one of these avatars, namely Jesus Christ, of ascension. We're here to move beyond just this earth. We're not confined or condemned to just this one planet for the rest of eternity. There's a whole universe for us to experience, to interact with, and that experience just gets greater and greater and greater the more that we evolve, and that is the process until we go back ultimately to this indescribable being, which everybody refers to as God or the Absolute or Allah, or whatever else, whatever other name, Great Spirit. And anyway, so the Aetherius Society brings in this concept, this realization that there are masters on other realms of dimension, speaks about avatars. We believe Jesus was an avatar. We also believe that Buddha was an avatar. We believe that the intelligence of Buddha, and you're going to hear this later on this afternoon in a transmission, is still on this earth. And in fact, who here has heard of Shambhala? An etheric city over the Gobi Desert area of this earth, referred to as Shambhala. We believe that the Buddha is resident on Shambhala. So, on the one hand, we bring in the concept, the realization of masters on other realms of other planets, but we also bring in how these masters are interacting with humanity at this time, what they are doing behind the scenes, yes, and in many ways, most specifically, dealing with, you use the term Antichrist, or there are masters of the black arts in the lower astral realms. There aren't just higher astral realms, there are also lower astral realms, Dante's hells, where these so-called intelligences, the devil being the name of perhaps the arch black magician in the lower astral realm, Lucifer, and how these various, or three in particular, adepts, we call them adepts. This altar is dedicated to these adepts, 3 adepts, actually 6 adepts, but 3 of whom took on in the last century, in the 1900s, an earth physical body, what we call a fourth aspect body. They didn't come in their full power, in their full aspect. It was dumbed down for karmic reasons. Karma is relevant to everything. These masters act totally within the law of karma. And with our action on this earth, with what we've done, the wars we fought in the name of these avatars who've been amongst us, and the crime and the poverty and the suffering that we have brought upon ourselves, has greatly limited the amount of divine intervention or karmic intervention these beings are allowed to use. We're pretty spent up in how much help we can get. I mean, but the Buddha came, we made him beg. Jesus came, we put him on a cross and crucified him. So our collective karma on earth is not that good. We're in debt. We're in serious debt. And relevant to what, and I think this might come up in one of the transmissions, but
along those lines, it is important to note that who comes talking of love, what happens to them? Assassinated. Mm-hmm. Throughout time, this is a thing that goes on, right? I mean, obviously we got Gandhi, we got Martin Luther King, but you can look on a broader spectrum to look at what's going on with that. They get assassinated, is how it goes.
What I was saying earlier on about previous civilizations of Lemuria and Atlantis, both of which we've destroyed through our own craziness, our own ignorance, fighting over religions, as you say. It has, when one has this experience of cosmic consciousness, and I don't claim to have had it, but I believe those who have had it, and they all say the same thing, is that you have this experience of absolute oneness, that there is only this oneness, and as Maja said, past, present, and future. There is actually only the now. There is only the now. We have this very limited concept of time, as we have a very limited concept of space, and in that state of awareness that all things are living, all things are a part of this oneness. That includes, in fact, the most sacred thing we can touch is this being beneath our feet, the earth, the Mother Earth. It's not just lifeless rock, any more than we are just flesh and blood and bones. There's spirit in there, there's intelligence in there, there's life in there. And this earth is also, as a part of the aspect, as an aspect of God, undergoing this very same process of evolution that we're on, that the ants are on, that the butterflies are on, that the trees are on, that the birds are on, that everything is on, because it's all an aspect of this same divine oneness. And yet, and this is a very, very beautiful and yet very sort of sad in another way aspect of the law, that the greater the intelligence, the greater the being, the greater the sacrifice that intelligence makes. These avatars came here, they have made sacrifice, and the earth has made sacrifice. In fact, in one of our texts that came through, we believe from a master from Mars, there's a very simple line. It says, "Love is sacrifice, real sacrifice." And the earth, through Lemuria and Atlantis, suffered extreme pain from the atomic nuclear wars that we inflicted upon her body. Likewise, in that era of the Cold War that I mentioned, when we went crazy dropping atom bombs and 110 hydrogen bombs in 1 year, thinking we could do this without ever getting permission from the Logos of this earth to do that, or to have the wars that we have had. And the point is, under that law of karma, this could only continue for so long. And that time is why I said these are the 8 days of the prophecies, because that time has come. And just as Jesus was only allowed to suffer for so long on the cross, so the Mother Earth can only suffer, hold herself back for so long. And we need to get with that program. And in the early transmissions that came through Dr. George King, they alluded specifically to 2 things very often, not exclusively. One of which was the coming of the next master, which we believe, like other faiths, will happen, and obviously is yet to happen, because we believe this master will come openly, and we won't be able to play you, but I'll read you the text that was given through Dr. King about that in 1958. And the other thing that they alluded to was something called the initiation of Earth, which we believe took place on July the 8th, 1964, and it's actually the holiest day in our calendar, when a tremendous infusion of energy, which the Earth had withheld, was an initiation which she had deserved karmically, was given to the planet, to the logos of this earth, that she is now releasing that energy. She could have released it in a very dramatic and quick way, which would have thrown us all off into an etheric realm, but which she is releasing on a very gradual basis. But this is behind the quickening that we're all experiencing. That on so many different levels, there is a quickening of vibration that is taking place on this earth, and that pressure is on each and every one of us to come in line and in harmony with that change that's happening. And it's totally, not just fundamentally, a spiritual transformation. As the masters have repeatedly come and tried to tell us who and what we really are, and we've ignored them and we've crucified them and done whatever else to them. But the hourglass is running out, and relative to that, because as this earth, as the vibrations of this planet, the whole planet, and all living things on this planet, which is everything on this planet, begin to heighten and quicken, there can be no, as we've had, what lower astral realms. The vibrations will be too high to have lower astral realms. There are no lower astral realms on the other planets within our solar system, Earth being, in that sense, because of us, not because of the planet, but the sort of the ignorant, the baby class in this classroom of planets. And yet at the same time, as Maja has so well said, there aren't, they're certainly not saints, and they're certainly not masters in the true sense of being a master, but there are magicians of the black arts who engineer things on the physical realm of this earth, and have done throughout the centuries. And this, or given this quickening stage that is taking place following the initiation of Earth in 1964, these guys down here are and would have been to a far greater extent getting very restless and trying to stir up greater and greater trouble on this physical plane. To which extent 3 avatars, 3 intelligences coming down in that spiral sense that Maja referred to. In other words, as we would phrase it, intelligences from other worlds within our solar system, from other planets within our solar system, took on Earth physical bodies, not through mating, but through the soul, or whatever, the incarnation coming into the body of that fetus.
Well, if you read, that's a good point to make. Like, so you think, how does that happen, right? How does it go that a god takes a body, you know? Mm-hmm. And usually there'll be a human mother. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But what the description of it is, like, if you read the Bible, how does Jesus come into Mary? Through the breath. The Holy Spirit is the breath of God. They call it the Ruach Elohim. And it comes and breathes breath into her mouth. And if you look in a lot of the traditions, there's an idea that your soul or spirit can enter and exit through the mouth, right? This is a very common theme throughout a lot of different traditions. And as it goes with the gods, when they interact with the earth, where does it happen? Through your breath. Mm-hmm. What is yoga? How do you unify with God? Breathing.
And on which note, the rishis, yes, or the yogis, whatever, refer to manifestation,
right,
as the great outbreathing and inbreathing of God.
Yeah.
This whole manifestation that God breathed out is now in the process, just as we breathe out, of being breathed back in. And
it's the same in Egypt too.
It's all going back to that source from which it came. And I always love to say this when one thinks of the outbreathing and inbreathing of God, is, well, for how long has this God been breathing? This is just one breath that we're going through. Anyway, so three of these, we call them cosmic masters, interplanetary beings, adepts, took on Earth physical bodies sometime, I would say, in the early part of the last century. And through diligent yogic practice, attained cosmic consciousness. And when one has that experience, and as I say, I can't speak from personal experience, but everything changes. Everything changes. And nothing at the same time happens by chance. And one realizes that one's here for a very profound, specific reason, which I would say in almost every case is to, as you mentioned, raise humanity, to lift humanity out of our Maya, out of our ignorance, out of our illusion, into a greater realization of what it all is. And anyway, these particular three individuals took on Earth physical bodies with the specific purpose of going into the lower astral realms, following the initiation of Earth, to transmute the devil and centers of evil in the lower astral realms. We're not organized in a spiritual sense, and this was all foreseen, and therefore these avatars came because they knew that this initiation of Earth had been due for centuries. It had been due since Lemuria or Atlantis for the planet, but she withheld it until this time when the karmic clock said enough, and hence the quickening of vibration. And these adepts, this is all, as I say, foreseen. In fact, the beginning of this transmission, I don't think we're going to hear this bit, but it begins by saying, many centuries ago, the wise ones looked into time, and there they saw apparently inevitable results brought about by the fall of man.
Well, those are the prophets, right? And
well, you could say so. Yeah. Yes. If they, I don't think they're referring to them here as prophets.
But it's that idea.
If they're referring to them anything as here, I would say they're referring to them as the perfects of Saturn, because again, in our understanding, the most evolved culture in our solar system, the most advanced planetary cycle, is the Saturnian cycle. Because we don't just go for, there are stages. We'll get into that in a little moment. So I think it was more likely the Saturnian masters within our solar system who foresaw this this situation.
And Saturn is time, right? It's Chronos, so they're they can look into time, and that's a lot of the
prophecy. In this book we have the 9 freedoms, which is based on 9 specific transmissions given by a master from Mars. And he talks about Saturnian existence, the 8th freedom, Saturnian existence. And he says these masters can inhabit more than, I think there's like 1,900 and something bodies at the same time.
Yeah.
And some of the masters are able to double that feat. So you might see, next time you see a cat or something, there may be an aspect of a Saturnian master.
Well, and if you think that sounds weird, Buddha put his consciousness into an elephant in part of the story, and in other people too.
Right.
So he took his consciousness and put it in the elephant to find out what was wrong, There's stories of that happening a lot. And if you guys have seen the movie X-Men, the part where Xavier puts on his helmet and he can go into everyone's consciousness? It's just like that. When you understand you're the same as everybody in here, I can put my mind in all your mind. It's the same mind. Your mind is my mind. That's all they do.
Because, as mentioned at the beginning, we're here to raise the Kundalini, or to become like a saint. We're here to become a saint, first and foremost. And have this experience of, if all saints have had this, I don't know, but have the experience of cosmic consciousness. When we can bring about the state of cosmic consciousness at will, then we are no longer confined to this body or limited to this earth. We ascend. And on attaining that level, we have a choice. Either to go on to experience what we call interplanetary existence on one of the other planets, specifically Mars and Jupiter, or to remain on this earth, because the more you realize, again, it comes back to sacrifice. or to remain on this earth as an ascended master, which I'm sure you've all heard of the term ascended masters, who live in various retreats, most obviously known are the Himalayas, the Andes, tend to be in mountainous places, hard to reach places. There is definitely a sort of general rule of thumb about it all. There are definite principles and hallmarks, and as Maja said, which is to help humanity evolve. I mean, they come from a place of love and service. That's the principle. That's the maxim. Jesus came to tell us how to love one another and to serve one another. That is the path towards enlightenment. You're never going to get enlightenment without those two aspects, without living that out.
Right.
So we get the opportunity then to either go on to another level on another planet, specifically Mars and Jupiter, or to remain on Earth, helping humanity in various different ways. And again, I would say primarily behind the scenes, because unlike us, they're not all seeking fame and celebrity status and wealth and all the rest of it.
Stuff.
They want the opposite of that. As I also said, these masters, any master, completely lives by the law of karma, follows the rules of karma, because everything has a repercussion. And by taking on an earth physical body, and let me read this. Many centuries ago, the wise ones looked into time, and there they saw apparently inevitable results brought about by the fall of man. Through Lemuria, Atlantis, our wars, subsequent wars, chaos, maltreatment of each other, poverty, crime, greed, all the horrors that we've had throughout our time here. They conferred together, allowing the shining oil of sweet compassion to imbue their negotiations.
Anointed oil.
Yes, shining oil.
That's right.
They took into consideration the deep karmic implications of what was to come. Then turned they to 3 devoted beings and asked of these to give up the bliss of their advanced initiatory status and take gross bodies bound by karma, held by the limitations of man, and come and live and breathe and eat and pray and suffer among ye. Children can create a mess, and the parent can come in and clean up the mess, but the child doesn't learn very much. And by these adepts limiting themselves, becoming like us, in other words, to all extent and purposes, they were human. They brought about an infinitely greater karmic manipulation by going into the lower astral realms, by limiting themselves and having to come and live and eat and pray and suffer among us, than if they'd just gone, oh, they got a bit of mess down there on Earth, sure, no problem, we'll take care of that, and down they come and they sort it out and go back again.
The kid just makes the mess again.
And the kids just make the mess again. It doesn't carry the same karmic weight. You're making a greater karmic manipulation by doing it as one of them than if you were just to come in and do it on their behalf. Because in reality, us who've created that mess through our past life experience, we should have been the ones to go down there and clean it up. But as I say, we don't have the awareness and the ability at this stage, and this stage is being quickened because of the initiation of Earth. So time is short. We now have a debt to these adepts. It's actually, we still have a debt to Jesus. We have a debt to Buddha. We certainly have a debt to the Lord Babaji, who we believe is a Saturnian master who's been here for over 18 million years, which is about as long as we've been here. Because these masters and these ascended masters hold a karmic balance. By them being here, they are offsetting the negative karmic situation that we have sown. The more yogic practice that I do, you do, any of us do, the more we reawaken ourselves, and which is what the whole process is about, of awakening ourselves. And as we awaken ourselves, we become more aware of our past lives, who we were, what we've done, and that is the whole process. But because we have free will, we've chosen free will, and we're using this time on earth for the most part in pretty trivial, meaningless ways, and largely unconscious ways. We are, I don't want to say involving ourselves, but we're not reawakening our memory, but that memory is inside of us.
Well, and that's a very important thing, and a lot of folks talk about this. There's that, Francis Yates did that Art of Memory book, and to try, like, how many of you guys remember being born? Don't remember? How are we as human beings supposed to remember why we're here? We can't even remember our own individual birth, right? That's how much we forget. You even forget being born. You remember how much of even today do you remember? How much of every word that you said? So you have to think, we have a capacity to fit the entire cosmos in our consciousness. But because of the wiring and the way that our meat suits are, we can choose or not choose to focus and concentrate on any part of that at any time. We can choose to concentrate on all of it in entirety, but the majority of the time we choose to concentrate on, like, maybe a little thing that annoys us, something we don't like, something that we want, ice cream, eating, whatever. But it's like a choice, You can remember your birth if you want. You totally can. Go into a guided meditation. Concentrate. Hypnotism. You can go anywhere you want. Have you guys ever done guided meditation? Remote viewing? You can go anywhere, be everywhere at the same time. But you have to choose to turn your brain on, You
knew that in a past life you had you'd been married to a certain person who had, I'm using a sheer example, who had greatly mistreated you. You'd make the better part of, perhaps, the chances are, of this life having a vendetta against that person. And that's not in your best interest or theirs. What's in the best interest of all of us is to awaken ourselves, raise our consciousness through spiritual practices and discipline and service, and being clear of what our real purpose is here. Our purpose is not to settle scores. Karma will take care of that in its own way. So that's a big part of it. And sorry, just to finish your other question, the difference between adepts and avatars. Get a slightly grey area. An avatar, as Maja was saying, is a being who's come from another world, taken on an earth physical body. That's an avatar. We always refer to these particular individuals as adepts. Adept, I suppose, in their ability. They are extremely adept.
Well, a lot of descriptions of the adepts, too, it includes initiation. They have to be initiated in order, like if you look at Freemasonry.
Initiatory, advanced initiate, everything is going through processes of initiation.
That's right, like you talked about the earth, right?
Yes.
If you look at the word adept, like in regular people land, in Squaresville, you'll see it come up in like Freemasonry and occult stuff. They'll talk about adepts, and it's someone who has undergone an initiation to start them on a path. And that's who an adept is. Someone who is now focusing on starting on this path because they received an initiation. Just like, you can receive initiation can come from anywhere. You can get it from an animal, you can get it from a planet, you can get it from a star, you can get it from your mother, you can get it from all over the place. People think you have to get an initiation from like a priest or something. No, you can get it from planet Earth too. The sea, you can get initiated by the sea.
Yeah, by entering a whole new, what you were saying, an initiation. If you see a master perform something, that's an initiation. You've just had
evolution.
A great initiation.
Yeah.
The first three are all fairly short. The first is from a master we know by the pseudonym Mars Sector 6, so presumably a master from Mars, a Martian, who communicated a lot through Dr. King. And then there's two by the master from whom we take our name, we can refer to as the master Aetherius, who we understand is a Venusian master. And these three are fairly straightforward. They're just reminding us, teaching us of three essential truths. And these three little extracts were given in 1957.
I, known as Mars Sector 6, do not wish any of you to follow me. No interplanetary communicator has ever spoken in this way just lately to you, and has asked any of you to follow. We do not want you to follow. We want you to go back to the teachings of people like Jesus, people like Buddha, people like Sankaracharya, people like Sri Krishna. These are the masters who have, through a great experience upon other planets before they did come in holy sacrifice to Terra, to lift it from the mire. And mark this well, O men of Terra, not one of you would be here this evening had not these holy ones graced your land with their presence. Dear friends, surely, it is obvious that the laws which are God are far more important than the laws made by men. I am not saying for one moment that you should not obey the laws made by men. Of course you should. Also, more important than this is to live the laws which are God. Yes, I knew you would. Most of you here would rather be like the holy saint than like the murderer, liar, and thief. And yet, it is possible for you all, my dear friends, to be like the holy saint. You have all been told how to do this. You have all been told over and over again why you should do this. Isn't it foolish, really, when you come to look at it in this way? Imagine for a moment you are preparing for a race. You practice and practice and practice, and then at the starting line you grab hold of a wheelbarrow full of cement and you push this in front of yourself. Then you moan like the very dickens because you have not won the race, because you have not even finished it, because your strength has been expended in order to overcome the mass inertia exerted by the wheelbarrow. Yet that's what you're doing. Just what you're doing. Don't you realize, dear friends, that sooner or later you have to, not probably, perhaps, you have to get back to the essential teachings, the essential laws of God as laid down for you already. You all knew this. There's not a man here, either in a physical body or among the 4,000,000 in etheric bodies, there's not one of you who does not know this. Not one. And yet, you grab the wheelbarrow. You slow yourselves down. What are you doing when you slow yourselves down? I'll tell you. Listen, please. You're making conditions worse and worse for yourselves. You're bringing yourself unnecessary pain, unnecessary suffering, unnecessary hardship.
The next two extracts, the first is from a master, an ascended master, not an avatar, an ascended master who goes by the name of Saint Gu Ling. And then the second one is, we believe, the voice of Jesus, who spoke quite regularly through Dr. King in the early years, bearing in mind that Jesus, like the Buddha, they both came here. They have to have a close connection to us and to the people of Earth. They know this planet. They've been working with this planet for certainly the last few thousand years. And these two particular extracts deal with the kind of action that we can take. Okay, they're not just teachings generally, but the kind of action we can take.
Decide upon your road and do not take the little roads leading from the main path of service. Service is difficult. It is great. It means self-sacrifice. It means a greater, longer, surer step towards God realization. Forget not this, not ever. You people have been given great divine opportunities to serve your fellow men. You are not asked to serve your fellow men alone, but in a group of brothers, united together by a common bond. Then come together in this common bond and go forward together. Tonight, there are people in this very city which are hungry for the truth. They are starved. They are mentally maimed by the blaring of foolish politicians. You can pass among them, casting a fruit here, a pearl there. Do this. Detach yourself from your own personal development, and there will come a time when you will have great powers.
Oh, my friends, more than ever before, does the world need your love. You see, there is so much suffering in this world people this very night are suffering. Children this very night are hungry. Little children, defenseless ones. I know that you would defend these with your life, but there are others who, my dear friends, have been caught up so much in the unfair scheme of distribution, who this night cannot even feed those who look upon them with trusting eyes. Surely, oh dear friends, I can count upon your prayers.
All those different voices all came through Dr. George King, just as you heard it. I should say that they refer to Earth as by its Latin name very often, sometimes as Terra. So if you hear the word Terra, T-E-R-R-A, that's what it means. It is hard for us to grasp, but because we look at it and we haven't got a clue what's going on. When I say we, I'm talking about us as individuals, the human race. We're part of something infinite. There's much more going on. And as mentioned, though we're not aware of it, does not deny the fact that the Earth is a living being with an advanced goddess, planetary goddess, intelligence beyond our ability to comprehend intelligence, who has withheld herself, because even though we're just microbes on her back, we're an aspect of the one divine being that is God. And because this initiation was due, the bigger initiation, I briefly referred to it, of Earth, when she was given this tremendous infusion of energy that she could have released in a matter of a few minutes and could have maybe flipped her on her axis, whatever, we don't know, but which she's gradually releasing, that, as I mentioned, we're seeing in this quickening of vibration, this shake-up that's happening in so many different ways. It's all actually emanating from the Earth, and if you tune into it in the right way, it's profoundly spiritual, and it's very elevating for us as individuals. If we move in that direction, if we go contrary to it, we find problems, difficulties, challenges, people get freak out, upset, chaos, that Maja kind of referred to. And the more you investigate it, took me a few years of investigating, but the more you investigate this stuff with a very open mind and with the right motive, the more you discover how profoundly real it is. And this is when you start remembering stuff and awakening yourself to a bigger picture. But knowledge, awareness in this way brings with it responsibility. It's not just, hey, wow, that was cool. There has to be. There's responsibility that goes with it, to act, to take action, the right action, in the light of that awareness, if one's ready to do so. We're not, everybody's at their own level. Dimwits as we are, but karmically we're essential, These masters can't. You're going to one of the one I think is the last transmission we're going to play is dealing with another operation we call Operations Sunbeam, giving energy to the Earth. This is post or since the initiation of Earth. We do this. The masters are involved, but us people have to be involved karmically. And if we weren't, then it couldn't happen in the same way. It's a little bit like, are you familiar with the story, the wonderful children's story, All for the Want of a Nail, a Kingdom Was Lost? Do you know that? It's a marvellous children's story. It's very English, I suppose. A battle is being fought, right? The kingdom falls. The king is killed. So that because the king is killed in the battle, old age medieval kind of battle, the kingdom is lost and goes to the other side. And the reason that the king is killed is because one of his main knights was not able to get to the battle to prevent the king being killed, the strong guy, because his horse that he was riding had lost a nail in its horseshoe, so the horse couldn't be ridden. And so he goes to a blacksmith to get the horseshoe fixed, and the blacksmith's fresh out of nails, would you believe? So there's no nail to fix the horseshoe, to fix the horse, to fix the rider, to go and fight in the battle to prevent the king being killed and the kingdom being lost. All for the want of one, if there'd been one nail. So, very small things can bring about great things. And there's a lot in that. And so in this mission Operation Sunbeam of giving energy to the earth, we, as I say, dimwits, humans, are nonetheless very essential to the equation, even though the major aspect of it is being carried out by masters. They could do it without us being involved, but it just wouldn't have the same karmic consequence. There's a book here, The Holy Mountains of the World. Between 1958 and 1961, 19 mountains around the world were charged with energy by the masters, infused it with spiritual power, if you like, for want of another term. That's the reason we go to Mount Baldy and some of the other more accessible mountains, to invoke the energies in the mountain and send them out to the world to uplift and raise humanity into this greater awareness of who and what we are as part of this planet, in this solar system, in this galaxy and beyond. And to make a very, very long story short, humanity has a great debt to the earth. She's been our home, she's provided us with the sustenance, everything that we've needed to gain experience, to gain enlightenment. We couldn't have done it without this home in space, without the food and everything else that we've needed to develop our bodies so that we can have these experiences and so that we can go on through experience. And so Dr. King realized that we need to make some kind of repayment to the earth for this debt. We're talking big concepts here. I mean, this is not, it's kind of irritated Dr. King that no other yogi master had thought of this. To him it was obvious. We have a debt to this planet, to this Logos. And there was another mission called Operation Blue Water that was necessary prior to the initiation of Earth on July 8th, 1964. But basically through Operation Blue Water he learned of psychic centers of the planet. Like we have the chakras through which energy flows, so does the Earth, the Mother Earth, have psychic centers, chakras, through which energy flows. And holding in the back of his mind the necessity for mankind to make some kind of repayment to Earth, he devised this mission we call Operation Sunbeam, where we take energy from the mountains, the holy mountains. This energy was essentially given to us, to mankind, to use for ourselves. And so instead of giving it to mankind, we take that energy. It was initially stored in a radionic battery. And then it was released through a radionic apparatus that he devised into the or over the psychic center of the earth through which energy flows, so that this energy was then taken into the earth. Now you're talking about a tiny, you're talking about a nail for the sake of a kingdom, a tiny drop, but it was the motive behind it. It was the fact that humans were doing this, recognized the need to do this, to be involved in this, that had great karmic implications. Now, we are required, we set up radionic apparatus. That's the bit that we play in a very precise way, at a precise time, in a precise location. Operation Sunbeam.
You can also just watch kung fu movies.
Okay.
Because have any of you guys like kung fu? You guys see Warriors of Zoo Mountain? They're doing
Right.
they're on the mountain. They take the energy from the mountain, and then they shoot it out.
You know, and because it does spill, this reality does spill out in different ways. I mean, the Lord of the Rings. This is Lord of the Rings.
Right.
The Lord of the Rings. This is the real version of the adepts in the lower astral realms. But you know, it hits. There's only one mind belt. And it comes out in different areas of the mind belt. So you're right. I mean, watch kung fu films. Dr. King loved watching those. He called it King Fu.
The Warriors of Zoo Mountain. It's one of my favorites.
Every thought is manipulating energy. Every action is manipulating energy, and it's one reason why in the Aetherius Society we're very big on prayer. I mean, dynamic prayer. We, using the mind to manipulate and the heart. And the physical body to manipulate energy. In fact, that's what we're all doing, and that's what we're here to do, is manipulate energy, but manipulate it in the right way and in a very potent and powerful way. And we raise ourselves and we raise humanity. There's a lot there, but you know, we're giving you a window into avatars, masters, and saints on planet Earth right now. Right now. This is what's going on, and it's there to be, if you feel inclined, to be investigated, you know, and to become a part of it, become a player in this change. Because as one of those early transmissions said, or that we heard, at some point you're going to have to, and we all know it. At some point we're going to have to become saints ourselves. And it's not by chance this is up here this afternoon. Not even a saint can reclaim a wasted minute. How are you using your time? Okay, well, we've got 2 minutes on that clock, which is just enough time to read about the coming of the next master. And this was a transmission through Dr. King on November 23rd, 1958. Which actually was given on one of the holy mountains, the second of the 19 mountains to have been charged, which is a mountain known as Brown Willie in Cornwall, a very mystical place in southwest England. And this is what was said: "There will shortly come another among you. He will stand tall among men with a shining countenance. This one will be attired in a single garment of the type now known to you. His shoes will be soft-topped, yet not made of the skin of animals. He will approach the earth leaders. They will ask of him his credentials. He will produce these. His magic will be greater than any upon the earth, greater than the combined materialistic might of all the armies. And they who heed not his words shall be removed from the earth. This rock is now holy and will remain so for as long as the world exists. Go ye forth and spread my word throughout the world, so that all men of pure heart may prepare for his coming."
Doesn't say when.
No, it doesn't. And that's a variable. That's a variable. And that depends on us. We are the key player. Humanity is the key player in this scenario, and it can go either way. If we really get with the program and realize that our planet's in peril, our climate or whatever, is in peril, we recognize the earth is something to be nurtured and respected, and when we recognize that the divisions between people of wealth or poverty, class, color, culture, religion are basically irrelevant. We're one human family that needs to cooperate and share and live together in peace and harmony. If we go that way, which at some point we are going to have to go that way. But if we start going that way soon, and there are people, more and more people who are ready and willing and want to go in that way, then that will have an impact. But if we continue in fighting our divisions, our factions, Maja referred to the greatest threat of a nuclear war on Earth, and our disconnection with the Earth as a living being, and the fruits
it's like our bodies too. Like you can see it in our since our bodies are like the Earth. Like look, how many people have cancer? Okay, what are the karmic in any disease? You know. What if you could do something before it got to cancer, right? That's like, what if we could do something on the Earth before it gets to crisis overload? Just like our bodies, right? It takes a little care, little attention. Pay attention, what are you eating? What are you doing? Take care of your body, take care of the Earth. It's the same thing. You don't get, it happens.
So the more we come together as a human race, then the more we delay the coming of the next master. But if we go the other way, and we have a crisis situation, which is just as possible, then it could be very soon. In this day and age, the way change is happening, a year is a long time. In the next 5 years, who knows what might happen in our world in the next 5 years? And particularly if we don't, his magic will be greater than the combined materialistic might of all the armies. Now that is significant, because if you do research on UFOs and stuff, you will find that they have completely deactivated nuclear missile silos. You will see that we've sent up fighter jets to when UFOs have been sighted, and their missions panel have gone completely dead. I mean, they're playing.
Which is actually physically possible, because if you look at electromagnetism, you can do an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, and you can knock them all out, right? You can knock out the electricity in a huge way. They already do it with EMPs.
Right.
So it's not something that is physically impossible. It's within the laws of the universe, the laws of karma.
So we may not be able to play or have this fight, because but the consequences will be severe, and they who heed not his words will be removed from the earth. Another key statement, because this earth, her vibrations are changing. She is the chrysalis becoming the butterfly. We need to be the same, and if we're not in that mode, then we're not taken out of creation. We're a part of God, but we will be taken to another planet to continue through our cycle of karma and reincarnation, but it won't be on this earth. So that there's a pressure for all of us to get with this program. And it hasn't got to be with or through the Aetherius Society, but it's got to be some way. And it's got to have service as a key aspect. Unselfishness, service, cooperation, recognition of the earth as a living being, recognition that there's life beyond this earth, recognition that there's one consciousness. And that will move us towards becoming saints, towards becoming masters, and eventually towards becoming avatars. Right. On that note, it's 5 past 5. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me. Thanks, you guys. That was great.